The Genesis GV80 gets a refresh for the 2025 model year, and in this video I'm going to cover all the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like to drive, as well as talking about the fuel economy you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as the styling on the GV80, well, as you can probably see, these styling changes are subtle. So they had a very good thing going already. They didn't want to mess with that too much. I don't blame them whatsoever. So up front there, you still have the very beautiful headlights, which do have new elements in them that are a little more advanced than before. You also have a new grille here, which has some extra dimension to the elements in that as well. And I think it's a really nice look. They also changed the bumpers here. So again, subtle changes, but it's a little bit more aggressive than before. You also have new metal Genesis badging, and the badges are the new Genesis logo as well, which is a great change. And this one also is available now in this matte green paint, which is a fun choice and is only $1,500 extra, which is a lot more affordable than the matte options from the German competitors. But coming down to the sides here, you also have 22-inch wheels here on these, which are some of the largest in the segment as well, and look really cool. You also still have the signature fender turn signal indicators here, which I always thought were a really cool and creative touch. And then going out to the back there, that is also mostly the same. Taillights are the same. Everything else on the back is the same, aside from the rear bumper, which now has those little like diamond-shaped cutouts there in the mesh. And you know, it's a nice change, and also nicely hides those exhaust tips there on this gas-powered version. And there also will be a new GV80 coupe here coming for the 2025 model year as well, which is the other big change. And so if you wanted the more sportback kind of profile like other competitors offer, you'll now be able to get that there on the GV80 as well. But as far as the regular GV80 goes here, I'm just glad they didn't mess the success, and I think it still just looks just as handsome and just it looks a little fresher here for 2025. The interior of the 2025 GV80 is also really nicely updated and is very, very impressive. So the entire front experience here is basically all new, even though the back is mostly going to be the same as before. But up front here, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these beautifully deep quilted seats that are so soft and comfortable. They have adjustable bolstering, they have adjustable lumbar, the thigh support comes out, and they even have massage here on these upper versions, and they are just so plush and so comfy feeling. These seats, I think, are right there neck and neck with the Lincoln Nautilus's seats for some of the most comfortable seats in this segment. I love these seats. They're also heated and ventilated here in these top trims, but basically everything except the base trim gets heated and cooled seats, so that's also really nice. And yeah, great seats. The steering wheel is also new here and gets rid of the controversial 2-spoke design for a 3-spoke design, a little more traditional here. And it's a really nice wheel, has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches, just a few buttons here on it, and you have just some metal switch gear. And I don't love this touch capacitive thing on the right hand side here to adjust the infotainment stuff, but outside of that, a really great wheel. Has little paddle shifters here on the back too. And then moving on to the main star of the show here, this 27-inch OLED screen, which is really impressive just for the fact that there are no brakes in it. Even some of the higher end stuff these days still has brakes in their big screens, like the one in BMWs and stuff. This, there is no brake. It is all one continuous panel, and it really gives it a futuristic vibe. Now, again, I think that they've been upstaged a little bit by Lincoln with the Nautilus and its crazy amount of screen real estate that they have, but this is still very impressive if you don't, you know, consider the Nautilus. And so as far as the gauge part goes here, it is a really nice display, but it's really simple. And I'm guessing that the average buyer of a GV80 doesn't need to have a ton of gauges, so this is completely fine and actually probably better than having a bunch of gauges. And there's really not much customization either outside of slight tweaks to the look of that single dial there, but you know, it should be totally fine. And this whole background is dynamic, by the way, and it will change depending on the time of day, the weather that's currently going on. It'll have, you know, rain clouds and things like that, and it's really cool the way that it adapts to your surroundings, and it's very intelligent. And here in these upper trims, you also have a head-up display, which is a really nice touch. But coming over to the middle here, again, the other part of this screen, it's touch enabled, and it's a really nice display. Now you have all these different tiles which you can customize and, you know, reorder them and all that, and it works pretty well. Now I will say that it is a little slow with the swiping, and sometimes I do have to tap twice on things to get it to do what I'm wanting it to do, and it's a little slow, as you can kind of see whenever I'm going through the menus here. And for a brand new software, you know, system, you would think that they would have this be top notch with the speed. I think it's a little slower than some of the competitors. Very minute differences here. We're not talking about massive delays or anything, but it is, you know, a slight delay nonetheless. And so anyway, you know, going through your radio stations and all that is, you know, pretty nice and simple once you have all your favorites saved at least. And, you know, media looks really great with how much it blows up the album artwork there. And, you know, really nicely done. Even the maps there can show you a satellite kind of look to it. And really cool. Now, right now in the summer of 2024 here, there is no wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. That is coming though. They said there's going to be an over-the-air update later this year that will give you that wireless integration. But for now, you still have to plug your phone in order to get that smartphone integration. But it does have that, you know, CarPlay and Android Auto, which is great. And a bunch of other things too. There's like a new mood curator, which will use the scents that this vehicle has that it can spray in the air vents here, which I tried, by the way, and I wasn't able to discern any sense. I don't think they're out because this car only has 1,200 miles on it, but so not sure how much that works, but it'll, in that mood curator thing, it'll put up these sunshades, it'll put some relaxing ambient music on and put on some ambient lighting and all that to relax you whenever you're parked, if that's something you'd like. It also works in tandem with these massaging seats, but otherwise, it's a really nice system. I think it is very well done for the most part. Once it gets that wireless update, you know, I think it's gonna be pretty good. Outside of maybe a little bit of a speed boost would be nice. But coming down, you also have your newly configured volume and tune knobs. There used to be scroller wheels in the old GV80s. Now they have nice normal knobs again, and all these materials feel really nice too. Everything is solid and tight. Everything feels heavy and feels really good, and just, you can tell they really pay attention to the details and the build quality here in the Genesis, and it really shows. And so just a few shortcut buttons and a little bit of haptic feedback here on this lower climate screen too to change the settings on that. And then coming beneath that here, you will see you have a controller wheel still. If you don't want to use the touchscreen, you can use the controller wheel instead and avoid the fingerprints. You also have a really nice shifter here, which is again this solid chunk of what looks like crystal and metal, and just feels so good every time you know, put this car in gear. You're gonna have that nice experience. The drive mode selector even feels nice over here too. And otherwise though, in this area they now have cup holders that aren't covered anymore, but they are larger as a result. You also have this wireless phone charger here and 2 USB-C jacks and a regular power outlet. But that's not super large. I mean, it can fit most phones, but outside of that, the only other storage you have here really is, you know, the normal pockets in the doors, which aren't huge either. Like stuff like an X5 has bigger pockets, but in the middle here you do have this center opening armrest, which is nice, and it looks like at first glance you just have this shallow little area here, but you can actually pull this up and then you'll see your nice deep cubby like you're probably expecting, and that gives you the you know, amount of storage space you're hoping for, and tons of space in there. The one other thing I have to mention is that you do have some padding down here by your knees, but unfortunately the way my knee is at, in the position I'm sitting in, my knee only comes in contact with this hard green upholstery here instead of the padded part. I wish all of this was padded. Also, you have this hard metal edge here as well, so depending on where your knee ends up resting, it'll be on hard metal, hard vinyl, or some actual soft padded vinyl. So it just comes down to your seating placement, but I just wish that was all plush all the way through, so that no matter, you know, what your driving position is, you have some nice padding there. That is something you expect in a luxury vehicle like this, at least I do. I also really love this green and brown combo. It's subtle for the green. It's not like a super bright green, but it's so cool that just have colors in interiors and these cool combos of colors that no one else really offers. And I really have to applaud Genesis for being bold and daring. Hopefully dealers actually order these cool combos and customers order these combos, and they're not just for these press vehicles, but it's really great that they offer this stuff. And also another really great upgrade here is that you now have a Bang & Olufsen stereo, which is an improvement over the Lexicon stereos I believe you used to have previously in these. And so now we have an 18 speaker system, does more wattage too now. It's 1400 watts of power, and it's a really nice sounding stereo. Just doing Bluetooth audio streaming here in this even sounds really great, really crisp, clear for everything, and a really well done stereo. Moving on to the back seat here, though, in the GV80, it is a nice amount of space. So I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I have a few inches of legroom to spare there, and a couple inches of headroom. Pretty average for this segment. You know, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing extraordinary, but you know, is still a very nice back seat, and does have not only heated rear seats here in this top Prestige trim, but also cooled, ventilated second row seats there for the outboard seats, which is very nice and something that a lot of other competitors still don't offer. Some do. but a lot of them don't, and so that is a really nice touch there. They also have their own climate controls back there and some more of their own power outlets. There's also a fold down center armrest with cup holders, their own pockets in the doors, and you even have a nice little touch of these little mirrors that drop down from the ceiling. You also have sunshades back there for those rear doors, and those backseat occupants especially can also appreciate this nice double panel moonroof here, which is not quite as impressive again as some of the others that have, you know, full length glass roofs and things like that, but still a really nice thing to have. And the nice perk with this one too is that it does open up here in the front, and you know, it does have a shade as well. Cargo space here in the GV80 is also pretty nice, pretty average for the segment, you know, nice and wide, nice and long. Beneath the floor there's not really much, just a tiny little spot to stow your cargo cover and a little bit extra underneath that, but you know, still a really nice amount of space. I don't think anyone's going to complain. It's of course power operated and all really well done. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Genesis GV80 has the really nice new Genesis key, which is just so classy looking and feeling. Nice metal buttons here on the sides, and just a really nice key. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the GV80. So the first thing you notice about it, I think the first thing that I always appreciate about these is you have really great visibility. The hood drops down nicely. You have a thinner A-pillar than a lot of the competitors. So a lot of them have chunky A-pillars. This one's noticeably thinner than the others. I really like that, and it just makes for a little bit better visibility, I think, than some of the other competitors. View out of the back is also really great, especially if you have the camera rearview mirror that this one has, which again, a lot of competitors still don't offer. This has that, which is great if you have a bunch of people in the back or stuff in the cargo area. You always have an unobstructed view here with that camera, but even if you don't have the camera option, you know, just even the regular mirror is going to be totally fine. It's nice and easy to see out of the back there. Other things here about this, well, I think one thing that's really impressive to me is the fact that even though this one is now on these 22-inch wheels, the ride is still so smooth and comfortable. Genesis does one of the best rides in this segment, in my opinion. It is so comfortable, and I'll get into this a little bit more whenever we get into the handling segment, but one of the great things here with this Prestige trim is you have adaptive dampers, and it has this road preview thing where it uses cameras to judge the road ahead and try to preload the suspension to appropriately glide over things as best as it possibly can. And I mean, it's got to be doing some good work here, because, you know, combined with just the little skinny sidewalls you have on these tires, you would think it would be a rougher ride than it is. And it's not the only vehicle in this segment that has a smooth ride on 22s. There's other stuff like the Lincoln Nautilus I just tested, which has also a very impressive ride, even floatier than this. But I think what I like about the Genesis is that it's a little bit more connected to the driving experience than the Nautilus, which is one of the main competitors and one of the strongest competitors in my opinion, which is why I'll be coming back to the Lincoln Nautilus a good bit in this video. But the way the Genesis set this up, I really like it, because like you have steering that feels a little more connected than the Lincoln and just feels actually really nice and a little bit sporty, just enough that you get enough feedback to, you know, feel involved in the driving experience, but you know, not overboard or anything like that. I also love, you know, the brakes feel nice and strong as soon as you dip down into the brake pedal there, but they're still easy to be smooth with, which is great. Also, throttle response is really nice and responsive. The 8-speed automatic sometimes will be a little slow to do a downshift, but that's just because it's again kind of putting this layer of molasses over everything, kind of smoothing everything over to give you a really nice and refined experience. Exactly what you want in something like this, I'd say, as well. And so, yeah, it's a really nice cruising vehicle. They also added more sound deadening here for 2025. You have thicker insulated glass now and more sound deadening elsewhere, but you know, you have like these double pane windows now, and it's a really nice touch. It's very quiet in here, as we'll see even on some noisier roads here in a minute. But I put it up into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. All right, took a little bit of time to do a couple of those downshifts there, but then this motor is so strong but so smooth. I mean, there are really no discernible shifts. It is so just buttery smooth, and this motor is also just, it gives you this huge wave of torque, but it is so smooth as well. It's really, you can't even tell that it's turbocharged or anything. It is just incredibly smooth and refined. I love this motor in a luxurious application like this. So it's the 3.5-liter twin turbocharged V6 engine. It has 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque, and that is a solid amount of power, but this vehicle does weigh about 5,000 pounds. So 0 to 60 time is only about 5.3 seconds. And again, you're probably not drag racing anyone down in this, so it's not a big deal. But you know, that's plenty of punch and does feel really nice and meaty. But it is also worth noting that if you're someone who doesn't need a bunch of power, you can skip this 3.5T, save yourself $9,000 and get most of the same equipment with the 2.5T version, which still has 300 horsepower, just 75 less than this. Still is going to be a strong performer, still gives you all the same great luxury and all that, and does it at a nice discount there if you aren't an enthusiast. And I mean, it's certainly nice to have the V6. The extra smoothness of the V6, I think, is notable over the 2.5T, at least, you know, from my sampling of it in the GV80 a couple of years ago. And now this road that we're on currently usually generates a lot of road noise, and it's really quiet. This is one of the quietest rides on this road that I've had in quite a while, I'd say. It is really, really well done. And again, I think the Nautilus is another one that, you know, is really close to this as far as that layer of refinement here. But yeah, feels really nice and smooth going over the gentle bumps and stuff. It does such a great job. But coming up some corners here that I always take. Let's see how it handles. I'm not going to judge this like a sports car. I know most people that buy these probably don't care about the handling a whole lot, but just for kicks, we'll go around a few corners here and see how it does. So sport mode, you know, gives you slightly heavier steering here. And I hear the tires protesting a tiny bit with these Michelin Primacy Touring all-season tires here. And it's honestly, I'd say, better than the Nautilus. That is one area where this certainly feels better. And it's not going to be quite as dynamic as like the Lexus RX 500h, which this also competes with. You know, this, again, it feels like it doesn't like doing it. It will do it, but this is not sporty. Maybe the new coupe version that's coming here later this year will maybe dial up the sportiness a little bit more. But the GV80 never, you know, really had sporting aspirations. The Germans have their sportier versions and stuff, and Genesis never really offered that. Maybe they will here in the future with them toying around with the Magma division for Genesis coming here down the road. But for now, you know, this is going to be the one if you don't have sporty intentions, which I'd say a large majority of the people that buy this segment of vehicle don't care about sportiness. But it still is going to be totally fine. You know, there's a little bit of lean here, and, you know, you feel the weight and all that. But, you know, you can still go around corners just fine. You still have confidence and all that. It's just, you know, not set up to be super dynamic, and that's okay. Not everything has to be a sports car. But like I kind of alluded to earlier, I do really like that this does have a little more of a connected to the road feel than the Nautilus, with the Lincoln Nautilus just being so floaty that I was actually getting like rebounds over bumps, and the steering felt like it was barely connected to the wheels. And I mean, it gave you a very isolated feel, and if that's what you'd like, then I would say the Nautilus kind of removes you from the driving equation even a little bit more, just as far as a feel goes. So this is kind of a nice blend though, because you have that nice buttery, smooth ride and, you know, just a marshmallowy, pillowy kind of experience, but still does give you a little more driver engagement, I think. And so, you know, just come down to personal preference. Certainly worth a test drive in both, but I think this is kind of a happy medium that I personally really like. And these do now come standard with all-wheel drive, by the way. The early years of the GV80, you could get rear-wheel drive, but now they're all all-wheel drive, and so it's going to give you that nice sure-footed traction in bad weather and all that. And here in the Prestige trim, one of the things you do get added on is an electronic limited slip differential in the rear there to, again, help you to have a little bit more of a dynamic and more advanced all-wheel drive system. And that's fine, but, you know, the regular all-wheel drive system, I'm sure in the lower versions is going to be just fine as well for, again, the average use case for this vehicle. And now out on the highway here in the GV80, it's a really nice highway cruiser. Again, that extra sound deadening I think certainly helps, and, you know, you hear a little bit of road noise, of course, but not too bad at all, honestly. And one nice thing too here with the GV80 is they all come standard with the Highway Drive Assist 2 system, which gives you a combination of lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control here. And it's also really nice with the head-up display, because it'll give you a better amount of information as far as when it's keeping track of the road lines, when it isn't, you know, your blind spots and all that, because blind spot monitoring is also standard. You know, the automatic emergency braking, rear cross traffic alert. Basically everything you can think of is going to be standard here in this, and you know, it's just really nice that you have all that. I think like the blind view monitor, which is, you know, putting the little image in the gauge cluster whenever you have your turn signal on, that's still reserved for some of the higher trims, but outside of that, everything else is pretty much standard. And we do have a car here next to us, so I can't test this too much, but I was testing this earlier this week. I did a decent amount of highway driving in this actually, and whenever you are going around corners, it's pretty good. It's doing a pretty good job here right now. But earlier this week, it was still kind of letting me go off onto the shoulder a little bit, and wasn't quite as good as some other systems as far as making sure you don't cross lanes. This system still is a little lax in my opinion. Others really love highway drive assist. It'll really come down to the area you live in and you know what the roads are like around you. But here in southwestern Pennsylvania, we have a lot of windy highways, and on these bends, that's where it can kind of struggle. So we got another gentle bend here. Again, I'm kind of just letting it do most of the steering for me here. And okay, this time it's holding it better. So the last time I was testing it was at night. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's not quite as good at night, because here in the day, it's doing a pretty good job. So again, your experience will vary. It does have the potential to do this hands-on assistance. It is not hands-free, and that is one key differentiator, is that the Lincoln Nautilus, again, one of the top competitors, does do a hands-free thing where it has Ford's Blue Cruise system in it, where it can do some pretty good highway driving there hands-free, then really elevates the luxury experience in that one as a result on the highway. This doesn't offer that kind of luxury yet. Now, we do have this driver monitoring sensor here, which maybe someday will be used to enable some type of extra assistance or something. We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, it doesn't really do any of that. And even like the Lexus RX will do their traffic jam assist thing, which is, I think, speeds at 25 miles per hour and under, or at least that lets you do hands-free. I don't believe this lets you do anything truly hands-free just yet, but it still is a really nice assistance system. And the fact that it's standard means you don't have to pay extra for it, which is great, because many of the other German competitors especially make you pay extra for a bunch of safety equipment still. Even things like adaptive cruise are still an extra cost add-on for some of the Germans. So it's great that you have all this stuff as standard. You don't have to tick a bunch of option boxes, and it also works pretty well. And whenever you're off the highway, one of the other really cool things is the 360 cameras in these are really good, and that is something I believe, again, is more in the higher trims here. But it is impressive how it can image exactly the way your car looks in its surroundings using the other cameras. And it's so cool, because it's almost like virtual reality of seeing your car in this space that is real, but it's like giving you this third-person view of what you're doing. And it's actually really handy in tight spaces and helping you to make sure you're lined up correctly in your parking lines and things like that. And just a really cool touch that most others will do some really nice 360 camera stuff, but I haven't seen anything that does that level of simulation, and it's a really cool thing to experience. Fuel economy for the GV80 is rated at 16 mpg city, 22 on the highway, and 19 combined. And that is notably 2 mpg less than the pre-refresh version in the city rating, and 1 mpg less on the highway. I'm not sure why it lost fuel economy, because I guess it's maybe tweaks to the grille and the front bumper, because mechanically this is all carryover from the pre-refresh. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's the 22-inch wheels. I have no clue, but regardless, you're going to get slightly worse fuel economy than the pre-refresh GV80. And during my driving here, I've been averaging about 17.8 mpg. I didn't do a ton of driving this week, so I could have maybe brought the average up a little bit more, but still be getting 18 mpg when these are rated at 16 in the city. I typically do get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in my driving, and I did a little more highway driving than usual in this, so that certainly helps. But I'm only 1 mpg away from that combined figure. Not too bad, honestly. Again, not amazing, but for a twin-turbo V6, something that's this heavy, this luxurious, that's not out of the ordinary. So, it's not great. Certainly not going to applaud the fuel economy. It'd be nice to see a more fuel-efficient option, and that is something that many of the other competitors do offer, which I'll get into in a second. But, still is pretty much par for the course, so make of that what you will. But the last thing to mention, though, is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing, GV80s in general, if you go for the base engine, they start at about $59,000, which is really competitive. Basically, everything else in the segment starts right around $60,000, so this is right in line with that. And then the 3.5T versions here, they do get a big price jump. They now start at about $75,000. Part of that is because it's about $9,000 more, I think, than before, and part of that is due to the fact that they got rid of the lower trim for the 3.5, and they start basically with the same kind of standard equipment as the advanced package. So it starts at a higher level of content than before, but still, it just makes this motor upgrade a much more expensive jump up than it used to be, and again makes this motor harder to justify, considering again the 2.5T is still a really great experience, and again most people probably don't care about horsepower that much in this segment. So it really makes this a tough sell, because this one, as tested with this matte paint, which is $1,500 extra too, this one is just over $82,000. And so it's not quite the value proposition it used to be. Now, I will just right off the bat give them credit and say that, BMW's matte paint, for example, if you do happen to want the matte paint, theirs is like $3,500 or so. So this gives you a nice discount on that. But even with the matte paint, you're only a few grand more for the X5. And if you get rid of the matte paint differences and you drop this down to a little over 80 grand, the X5 drops down to under 85. At that point, you're probably about a 4 grand spread between this and the BMW. And the Genesis just used to offer more of a value proposition. You still do get a savings there, but it's not as big of a savings as it used to be. And that makes this a tougher sell. I mean, I think a lot of people would still take this over a BMW, for example. You do have the better warranty, or the 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, which no one else matches as far as any of the competitors, but especially the Germans don't match that. So in a buy and hold situation, this is probably going to be better even, regardless of the discount. And it's also worth mentioning the Mercedes comes out to about the same, 85 grand or so as well. But those badges have a lot of prestige, and Genesis is certainly getting some extra prestige here. But I feel like a lot of people are going to would be willing to pay an extra 4 grand just for the badge. Those German competitors, by the way, do match this on horsepower and cylinder counts and all that as well. So, I think they maybe went a little too expensive, honestly, at least for the 3.5T versions. Again, when you go down to 2.5, they make a lot more sense. But even in that arena, there's still some problematic stuff, because the top two competitors in my mind are not the German competitors. It's the Lincoln Nautilus and the Lexus RX 500H is the one that specifically competes with this. So first off, the Nautilus. Now, that only maxes out about 300 horsepower, but that 300 horsepower is done with a hybrid setup, with a 4-cylinder versus just the non-hybrid 2.5T in this. And the Nautilus, again, if you are someone who just wants the most luxury possible and the floatiest ride, and that has, the bigger screen array with a 4-foot wide screen at the base of the windshield there, plus another touchscreen that has more speakers. It's, got more impressive sense, and the luxury of the seats having like 24-way position seats and all this. I just think the Lincoln does luxury better. It's just a little more over the top with the luxury. And again, some people might be overwhelmed by the screens or, something else about the Lincoln that they don't like. But I think, you get better fuel economy in the Lincoln, you get better technology in the Lincoln, you get even more luxury, in my opinion, in the Lincoln. Now, I will say that this feels a little more solid in some cases. The doors feel heavier, and the switchgear might feel a little nicer in most places compared to the Lincoln, but the Lincoln interior is insanely nice. So, and those max out at 73 grand, right around where a 2.5T, version of the GV80 would max out at. But again, you get that hybrid efficiency, you get the hands-free thing in the Lincoln. There's some nice perks there. So I think the Lincoln is currently my favorite in this segment, even if you don't consider the value thing. But once you consider the value of it and the hybrid thing and stuff, I think that the Nautilus is really the one to beat in this segment right now. But if you are someone who says 300 horsepower is not enough, I want the 375 or something around that you get here in this, Lexus also has what I would argue is even a better value with the RX 500H. That will give you about 366 horsepower, just a few less than this, and it does it also with a hybrid setup, with that having a turbo 4-cylinder and a hybrid electric motor in the back there to give you that extra punch. So you have very similar performance to this. It's even more dynamic. That comes with summer tires. It's a sportier handling vehicle than this. Not as smooth of a ride as this either, so there's a little bit of give and take here. But that RX 500H, those max out at about $73,000 as well. And so that gives you the extra punch you're looking for at the same price tag as a loaded 2.5T version of this. So, and the Lexus also has really good resale value, excellent reliability, track records, great dealer service experience. All that stuff is top notch in the Lexus. And the Lexus gives you all that stuff and all the extra power for the same price as the slower version of this GV80. Now, you could argue the screens maybe aren't as impressive in the Lexus, although it does have a 14-inch huge touchscreen and stuff, certainly not lacking. But it's not quite as plush, on the inside of the Lexus. I will certainly say I'd rather spend time in the GV80 interior over the Lexus interior, but that still does have even the cooled second row seats, which many others don't offer and stuff. So the Lexus really matches this very well, I think, and does it at a nice discount and has some nice perks to it all its own as well. So I think the Lex is another really strong one worth considering, and you can check out my videos on the RX 500H and on the Nautilus if you want to hear all of my thoughts on those top two competitors. I go into lots more detail in those videos on those vehicles. But overall, I still think the GV80 is a really nice competitor and still does offer a little bit of a value over the Germans especially, and it's still really likable, and I love the styling. It's still so classy looking, so expensive looking, so impressive on the inside here, and just a really impressive vehicle. And so yeah, overall still really like this GV80, even if it's not quite as insane of a value as it might have been in the past. But that's all of my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Genesis for providing me here with this GV80 to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.